Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, when you're subverting the lines between what's fact and what's fiction, you can do some really interesting stuff. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I am the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brain about not only the current project, but how they got started, state of the industry, things going forward, sort of the art of storytelling. Really try to break it down as in as many interesting ways as we can. And if you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, and we certainly hope that you do, you can find us either over on Apple, over on Spotify, or you can find every single episode we've done archived over at our YouTube channel at In the Seats. Also, we'd love it if you followed us on social media so you can get all sorts of fun updates. Either follow us at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One on either Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And finally, please do not hesitate to join us where it all started, over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, with our hardworking team who are giving you the latest and greatest movie news, reviews, and all sorts of fun stuff under the sun. On this episode, we got a real interesting one. We're talking with director Massoud Bakhshi, whose new drama is coming to virtual cinemas in the States this coming Friday, and the film is called Yalda, A Night for Forgiveness, and it won the Sundance grand jury winner. It was the Sundance grand jury winner, I should say. But it really is an interesting look at culture and sort of humanity at the same time, because it's one of those films that makes some political statements, but also really gets down to sort of the very core sort of human issues that make films like this so interesting. It is the story of Maryam, who is on this popular reality TV show called Joy of Forgiveness, and she's a young woman who has been sentenced to death for murdering her husband. And in Iranian law, the victim's family is allowed to forgive her and spare her life. So Miriam's fate is in the hand of her former husband's daughter, who's always been like a big sister, and it's watching the drama play out on this reality show setting for sort of millions to view during the celebration of Yalda, which is a Persian celebration of the winter solstice. Excuse me. They have to relive the past, and they have to find forgiveness, and all sorts of secrets come out during the process as well. And it's really one of those kind of things that makes you look very introspectively at how we treat each other at a real basic level. And we got to sit with Massoud to talk about the film and just sort of how he really dives into the core of all that in this really fascinating piece of cinema that I hope all of you get to check out, and I hope you enjoy our talk with Massoud, because he was an interesting guy. Well, I mean, obviously, I guess first off, congratulations on the film. I absolutely
Thank you.
enjoyed it. Can you walk me through sort of the origin of the story? Because I mean, is this something that actually happens? Is this something you were sort of fictionalizing? Walk me through sort of what made you decide to tell this story.
Well, actually, I'm coming from documentary film, and I'm still considering myself a documentary filmmaker. And I remember that some 15 or 17 years ago, I saw two documentaries about these convicted women because of murdering their husbands. And I always wanted to make a feature film, a fiction film about this subject. And then I started to read the interviews, to gather, documents, doing a research, which is essential for a documentary and a documentary filmmaker. And then in 2012, when I finished my first fiction film, I wrote the story of one young woman murdering accidentally her husband. And basically, it was the origin of the story, which was, a true story. I used to read lots of true stories, in the journals, in the press, and following, the cases and doing researches. And then I developed it to a fiction film, which became Yalda.
What is it about the significance around Yalda which sort of centers the story so well?
You mean the feast of the winter solstice?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's first of all, Yalda is the longest night, and one of the titles, I had, for the film was the longest night. And well, personally, I think it's one of the most important feasts and traditional feasts that Iranians celebrate, from 1,000 years ago, because it's a kind of a Zoroastrian feast. So from at least 3,000 years ago, Iranian who had a lot of respects for the seasons, for the nature, for the changing of seasons, they used to celebrate this night because it was the end of, it was the beginning of winter. It was the longest night, but after this longest night, the nights are becoming, shorter and shorter, and then there will be light. That's why Yalda, the Persian antique word of Yalda means the big birth. Yal means big and Da means birth. So, well, even if it's the longest night, it's the darkest night, but at the end of this night, there is hope. And that's why I chose this actually occasion for the happening, of the story. At the same time, this is a film, which is concentrating, on the contrast, different contrast between two main female characters, between um, actually forgiveness and revenge, between, social classes, and also the fact that the producer of the show insists to have this, to run this show, in this feastful night. And we can see the woman who is, the controlling woman for the television. She's against, having this program in this joyful night. It adds, to the contrast existing in the film.
And I mean, the framing device of setting it around a television show really not only amps up the tension of the story, but also just really makes a very sort of pointed social comment around issues like this. And I'm kind of curious, as you were putting all this together, because like you say, your background is as a documentarian, how do you sort of navigate the line between wanting to tell as true a story as you can, but still adding those moments of fiction to sort of move the story along the way that you wanted them to?
Well, actually, the first and second drafts of the script, I remember that I had the story of this woman, Maryam, but we had this television show, right? In the at the end of the story, the whole story was written somehow in a classical way with flashbacks, and meeting, between this young wife and, the old husband, and all of the events. And then I decided to change it radically and put the whole story in the frame of one episode of this reality show, because once I saw, the real show, existing show, because such a program existed for over 12 years in the Iranian national television. And of course, it was a bit different. the central theme of the show was forgiveness, just like what you see in the film, but of course with different sort of stories and not necessarily the crime cases. And yet the most interesting and exciting episodes of this show were those concentrated on crime cases. And when I saw these, episodes, I told myself that this is impossible. That when the life of someone is at stakes, you just do it just like a kind of any other TV reality show, and people sending SMS and this kind of entertaining, the and inviting the audience to judge the constantly the persons and the story and the people that they don't know really well, because we know very well that every reality show is somehow staged. And that's
Mm.
actually what I wanted to show with my film, that reality show is a kind of the modern fruit of this huge kitsch factory, which is the television itself, and also part of the general media, which is somehow manipulating every individual to get the result that it wants. And basically, I used to read a lot about Michel Foucault's, idea of panopticon, that these utopian prison, a round prison in which they put, the prisoner among this circle, and everyone can see he or her and judge the prisoners constantly, while they don't know what is exactly the scene or the crime. And it's not accidental that the set of this TV reality show, as you see, it's a kind of round prison, and it's just a kind of indication to this panopticon. And I think it's a kind of direct critics towards any kind of media and its manipulation of individual people.
No, and I mean, I think, especially given your background as a documentarian, this almost feels like a perfect jump into the narrative form, because it's blurring the line, much like the reality show does, and it's sort of taking the mirror that, the image that it's trying to present, and turning it back on us, the audience, which I think is really where the power of the film lies.
Thank you. Yeah. Actually, I was conscious because this decision was quite radical, because it was somehow um, limiting my mise en scène and my choice
Yeah.
of directing, because it's intensified a lot the story and the whole dynamic of the story. But at the same time, it was one, basically everything is happening in one place. And but I think together with the whole cast and crew, we succeeded to show to transfer this pressure that exists, in such a program, and the question of life and death, for this young woman, as well as the whole interference of the TV crew, and at the same time the invisible spectators.
And it was a wonderful cast, because I mean, everyone involved really did seem to get this project this sense of being these very distinct and sort of unique characters, but at the same time still kind of lost in the whole machination of this media image that they're partaking in, and it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, actually, the casting was. I was lucky to have all these, nice people, very well experienced and professional people. Even if the younger generation actresses, like the leading role, actress Sadaf Asgari, who plays Maryam. or the actresses like Afghan origin young actress who plays the adoptive mother, Ferishte Hosseini. These are, I mean, this combination between these young generation of actresses and the very well placed and known, actresses such as Benaz Jafari, who plays Mona, or Ferishte Sadro Rafai, who plays the mother, and Babak Karimi at the same time, who is playing the producer, Ayat. These are the actors who are very well known, and they are very active, not only in the cinema, but also in theater and television. But this combination worked very well. I remember that even for the minor roles, like the whole technicians in the TV, regie room. I remember that I asked a friend of mine who is a real, producer in TV, and she's not an actress, but of course she has, she likes to, she really loved to have a kind, at least one experience as an actress, and I invited her to be in the film just to direct somehow the other actors and actresses to be authentic and to do the real things that she's doing, in her everyday, job, in TV. And it was in my visit, to the real studios of Iranian TV that I saw that there were so many women working there. I remember that in my scripts, there were not so many women, active in behind scene. And then when I visited a kind of reality show, I saw that most of the technicians, they are females. And then I decided, to change this detail. And it's really, I think the whole cast, all of the actresses, they were, they loved the script, and they got the message of the script, and they really worked very well, and they wanted to make a good film.
Because I mean, it's one of those things where I mean, when you watch it, you are very kind of aware of the toxicity of the kind of show that they're making, but they're still all sort of completely invested in it. And I mean, it's just fascinating to see that sort of commentary on media that is, I mean, I'm in North America, so I mean, I see that all the time, but it's very fascinating to see that play out in a different culture as well. And I mean, I think that's a big draw for the film, and it's a reminder to audiences all over the world that this kind of media representation isn't just exclusive to one country or one region. It's kind of happening everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, that's also the questions of. I mean, the moral questions in the heart of the film are somehow very, very universal. The central question of the forgiveness, or which is somehow existing in any kind of human a human being,
Yeah.
thinking school, or every kind of, I mean, religion, and or the questions of the place of women, in the society. I think the fact that Yalda could talk, and communicate with different audiences in different culture was probably the best thing for me. But I had this chance, working for at least 5 years on the script, traveling to different script labs such as Sundance and Torino Film Lab in Europe, and other film labs. I had this chance to talk about this story with different, professional people from different cultures, and to see that this is a kind of universal theme.
For you, thinking back, can you sort of think of a moment in your life or even a movie or sort of anything in, like when you were a younger man, just sort of that sparked your interest in telling stories and being a storyteller?
Well, if I want to mention one film, it's very difficult because the for me, cinema is kind of the pantheon of many great films and great filmmakers that influenced me by one way or another. But before cinema, I used to read a lot, and I think the influence of literature, especially the stories and romance, on me, it's something I think unconscious. It's coming from my childhood and my adolescence that I used to read a lot, and then later I discovered cinema, and it's really huge power, to have a kind of impact. And well, I remember that the, when I was a child, in my country, the Hollywood film and foreign film in general, they were somehow banned because of the revolution, you know. And but paradoxically, the Iranian TV used to show a lot of films like Akira Kurosawa's film
Right.
or Andrei Tarkovsky's film, because at their at their eyes, these were not Western cinema, and they were somehow spiritual, somehow religious or traditional cinema. But these were some of the masterpieces of of the seventh art that I discovered later, that so many people, so many I don't know, film students or even film professionals, they didn't have the chance to see all these good films
Yeah.
at one time. And so I can say that my education, or at least my visual education, were with these masterpieces. And besides that, you should add the fact that Iran has a kind of a huge rich kind of literary heritage through the poetry and and the classic literature of Iran is very rich. And I think this exciting vivid generation of new filmmakers coming to the age every year, after year, in the Iranian cinema, they are benefiting somehow of this rich heritage.
Well, and I love that you mentioned that rich heritage because I mean, there's a little bit of that classical tone in Yalda because there is this sort of philosophical, sort of grand, sort of debate issue that is going on, but it's blending in sort of the narrative features of a perhaps like a drama and even a little bit of a thriller, but also pushing it into sort of real life with things that have actually happened and a little bit of documentary behind it as well. And I'm kind of curious for you, how important do you think it is, not just for Iranian filmmakers, but for filmmakers in general, to try to tell stories that are going to sort of push boundaries and blend as many different styles as humanly possible? Because after watching this film, like it's one of those ones that you just can't stop thinking about. It's not one that sort of shocked you, but it's one that stays with you and really sort of gets the mind thinking and working on so many different levels.
Well, actually, that's the aim of every film. I mean, that should be the aim of every filmmaker that makes a film today, because I think with all of these possibilities that telecommunication, the modern telecommunication provides us today, it's I think the role of seventh art, it's becoming somehow more special. It's we are talking about the modern cinema. We are talking about the subgenre cinema. That blends and mix. Every kind of genre. But at the same time, cinema is not, at least to me, and I think to lots of people, just like me coming from my country, cinema is not only making films for making films, or it's entertaining, people. It's something more, it's something, it's definitely a kind of self-expression way,
Mm.
especially when you're living in a country like mine. And at the same time, I spent something like 8 years to make this film. like because my first film was banned, and I had lots of troubles, and I discovered later that a blacklisted filmmaker, he cannot,
Yeah.
find financement, and that's why the film is, even if it's a very small film, it's a low budget film, but it's co-production of 5 countries, and which complicated the whole production of the film.
I can imagine.
So yeah, and then I mean, during all these years, I was really personally involved with the questions of forgiveness, the culpability, the religion, the role of, all of these traditional and religious laws, and I think I can say that when you are making a film in this situation, you're becoming part of your film, part of
Mm.
your story, and I think that the most, I can say that the most beautiful impact that the film had in the whole world, it was in my own country, because we released the film after lots of problems. We got the permission to release the film, and we decided to give all of the incomes of the film to liberate 2 convicted prisoners with the
Okay.
help of an NGO run by women, by
Yeah.
activist women. And then we succeeded, and that was the most beautiful, moment for the film, and for all of the crew and cast to see that the film goes beyond its story, and goes among the people in the society, and brings, can save the life of 2 real people. It's not only a story; it's something much, I mean, bigger, and that was really beautiful for me.
No, and I mean, I'm so glad you told me that, because I mean that is a beautiful thing, and it's the main thing that I got from the film, just the importance of forgiveness, but also how tricky it can get when you try to commodify that forgiveness. And
Exactly.
that's really sort of the delicate line that gets walked on so many different fronts. And it was a fascinating film to watch. And I just wanted to say thank you again for the time. I really appreciate this.
Thank you, Dave, for your compliments, and also for having me. Thank you.